You say you're fine, but I can see right through. You're holding your secrets for way too long. This can't keep going on. With every lie, they keep on hurting you, getting away with everything they do. This can't keep going on. No, we're gonna find them, and I'm gonna fight for you. They better start hiding. We'll be running with the lions, lions. We'll be running with the lions, lions. They can't run, they can't hide. We won't stop until they're down. We'll be running with the lions, lions.
Hello, everyone, and happy Sunday. And I cannot believe that we're already at the end of July. I hope everybody's having a great summer so far. I know I have been. And I'm your host, Dr. Kalpana Sundar, and this is Gloves Off. If you've joined us before, well, welcome back. And if you're new, well, I want to let you know a little bit about Gloves Off. This is not just a show, it's a space for bold disruption of outdated paradigms. I see those every day, and that's what we're here to talk about. It's also about unapologetic clarity. Everybody I interview on this show has something that they do that's a little different, something that they are passionate about, and that's where they want to make a difference in the world. So this is a show where strategy meets soul, leaders come to speak without their masks, and if you're done with sugar-coated success stories and silent suffering, well, welcome home. So today I'm really excited because I'm going to be interviewing somebody that is really a expert when it comes to supplies and inventory. A lot of times when we start a business, we don't think about those things. We think about the sexy stuff, the business, the signs, the aesthetics, all of those things. But you know what? The devil is in the details, because often it's the little things that can make or break a business. And that's exactly what we're going to be finding out from Kevin Wyler today. But before we get into all that, I'm going to obviously introduce, not interview, one of my sponsors, Jeremy Meineke. And he is a trainer. So obviously he works in the fitness industry. So if you're looking for a way to get fit without having to worry about what you have to eat, what you have to do, if you just want to show up and have somebody lead you, well, give him a call. There's a QR code up there that will allow you to get in touch with him, find out a little bit more about him, and see if it's a good fit. All right. And if you are new to the show, all the old episodes. So I'm going to put this up here so you can take a look, scan the QR code, and you can subscribe. I'm going to leave that up for a second. All righty. So now let's get back to what we're going to be talking about today. So as I mentioned before, Kevin has 22 years of experience in the industry. So he's an expert when it comes to, let's see, supply engagement, which is really interesting because a lot of these words you may not even understand what they mean, but we're going to talk about that. So he's an expert in supply engagement, inventory efficiency. Also, he is a strong advocate and user of ease supply automation. And also he's a trusted partner in top performing medical spas, bringing a unique blend of industry and knowledge and strategic insight. So what I love about this company is the fact that a lot of companies are out there just to sell you supplies because they don't really care beyond the sale. I'm not going to sugarcoat it because that's not what we're here to do. But medical supply, the medical supply company is so different because they care about what happens to their clients after the sale. And that's where I think things are very different. And it's kind of where strategy and soul combine, because a lot of businesses out there don't have soul anymore. They're just interested in transactions. And I really love the fact that they're doing things differently. So let's welcome Kevin Wyler. Hello, Kevin. Welcome to Gloves Off. I think I messed up on all the things you do. So I was like, you're gonna have to
I think you
clarify
did.
for
I
us.
think you did all right. You're good.
I was like, wait, I started reading it and I was like, I don't even know what half of these things mean, but I guess that's perfect because
Yeah.
then
Good.
part of
Good
what I love,
segue.
part of what I love about the show is I get to discover along with the audience what all these things mean. So this is where you're going to enlighten us. So
Sure.
welcome.
Well, really appreciate you having me on, and we'll see how we do here to describe some of those things that you talked about.
Yeah, or I tried to talk about really. So,
You're all
well,
good.
let's start with what got you interested in the medical spa supply space.
Sure. So as you had said earlier, I have 22 years of experience in the medical device and distribution industry, and I worked for one of the large medical device suppliers, distributors, I should say, for 20 years. And we started this business, my partner and I, really because we felt there was a need in specifically in the medical aesthetic space for a true distributor for um, med spas and medical aesthetics providers specifically. The distributors that existed prior to us, really, their focus is on doctors' offices, clinics, nursing homes, hospitals, right? Some of the places that some of the clients that you work with initially came from, right? In starting prior to starting their businesses. We wanted to create a business really for and dedicated to medical aesthetics providers. And that's what Medical Spa Supply is. It really is a distribution company that is designed for medical aesthetics providers.
Well, I think it's so wonderful because it's really like a one-stop shop. So when I owned my medical spa, I remember I used to have to get so many different supplies from so many different companies. And to be honest, it got to be a lot to just remember who we got what from. I mean, granted, I had staff managing that, but still, it was a real pain because different companies have different rules, different regulations, different timelines, and they ship how they want things ordered. It's a lot to keep track of. So can you explain how what you guys do is different from that?
Yeah, I think in going into what you said at the beginning of the show, I'd say one of the biggest things that we do differently is it's just providing a higher level of service. Whenever I look at distribution, you think about just the word distribution itself, really moving supplies from point A to point B, right? Um, and in that process, what I feel like is clients are going to work with you if your pricing is, the lowest pricing out there. That's really the barometer for working with somebody. We do have great pricing, and we what I really call best value pricing, meaning we provide the best value pricing for the service that you're going to receive. But on the other end, on the service end of things, what you'll find is that we are dedicated to making sure that our clients have what they need, that we take care of everybody. We were just talking earlier about, you're expecting a delivery and no one answers the phone anymore. If you call us, we have customer service reps that answer the phone calls, answer emails quickly, get back to customers. And I just think that's really important because that's an area that's very much lacking in today's environment, and something that people really want is traditional customer service. To have somebody to talk to in case something doesn't work out the way they want, or they need something overnight, or whatever the case is.
100%. And really, it is. So I want to talk a little bit more about some of the points that you brought up. So, number one, I love
Hmm.
the fact that you use the word value because, again, right now, or not right now, I just think in general, people, when it comes to doing business, they are always looking for the lowest common denominator, which is the price, which
Sure.
that is not the best place to compete. So, it drives me crazy in the aesthetic industry. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
providers, when people are looking for the cheapest provider, that drives me crazy. So
Sure.
value is a really important word because you want to be able to not only look at the price, no, you don't want to pay the highest prices either, but you want to
Agreed.
make sure that there is a good balance between the quality of the service that you receive and the price. And that's really that's where you identify the value. And there is a lot of value in customer service. You buy an expensive piece of equipment. Um, or something, anything, and something can go wrong. There may be a delivery, anything can happen. Well, you want to
Sure.
make sure somebody's going to answer that phone or answer your email.
Yeah, I agree. That's the biggest thing with the distribution business is like nobody says to themselves, "Oh, anytime things go well, you're expected. They are expected well. If it doesn't go well, and any of those myriad of things that you just mentioned happen, that's the point where people have the capacity to remember, okay, that transaction didn't go well, right? But it's all about how did you respond to that and how did you, what we always say is make it right for the customer. And that's what we do.
Right. Because the reality is things don't go 100% correctly all the time. No company has that. No company has a 100% track record. Things do happen. Maybe sometimes things fall short of somebody's expectations, but it's not the what happens that's so major. It's the how you handle it. That's the really important part. And it
I
sounds
agree
like
with
with what you guys do, you're handling things because there's actually somebody to handle it, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's really what we set our whole business up on is making sure that the customer comes first, and that's really our first motto when we went into business. Both myself and my business partner Brad, we just said, if we're going to do this, we have to make sure that that's the most important thing, and if we do that, that's not necessarily the best short term, like you said, of some other companies that their idea of going out and they just want to sell and move on. Those are things that will benefit you in the short term. Having a process where you have great customer service, it's a long-term play. And it takes time in order to build that up and have customers return and come back to you. But that's really how we've modeled our business and the reason why we've been successful, in my opinion.
Well, I would say that anytime you're doing something different than the rest of the industry, which is so much of what this show is about, doing people
Sure.
who are really bold enough to do something very different, it can often be a lot slower because the world isn't ready to really catch up, and I think entrepreneurs face this on a regular basis because we're often identifying some sort of issue, but the world doesn't see it as an issue quite yet. So it can
Yeah.
be a slower uptick in the business, and that can be frustrating. How do you deal with that?
Um, Maybe can you repeat that? I wasn't
I
fully
guess
following what you were
Sorry. So
asking.
what I was trying to say is that I feel that entrepreneurs in general, when we identify a problem, a lot of times that problem is very obvious to us, but not sometimes as obvious to
Yeah.
our customers, is what I'm trying to say. So in your case, let's say people are really used to just wanting to find the lowest price. They're not understanding the value of the other of what you're
Sure.
delivering. So they're just saying like, oh, well, it just costs a little bit more. I'm going to go for the cheapest price. How do you deal with that? How do you explain to your clients what it is you do differently? How do you get them to understand? Because I know I face this a lot. So I was just curious.
Yeah. Sure. Thanks for clarifying that. I appreciate it. What I would say on it is, I think the first thing I would say is you're not going to get everybody, right? You're not going to be a fit for every client. There are some clients that are just going to say, no, I want this. I want the lowest price. I want, right. And they may not always be a fit for us. But an example of that, and you spoke about this early on, was our program that we call EASE, which stands for Equipment and Supply Engagement. And this is where we help businesses that are in the process of opening a new location, expanding. We help them get the equipment they need through concierge, what we call concierge equipment planning, the program EASE. And the way that works, and the way that I always position that to clients is, we're going to provide you. Well, let me explain how the program works, then I'll explain how I position it. Is we're going to provide you with concierge equipment planning. So you work with somebody like myself who's got 20 years of experience that can kind of walk you through some of the equipment that you need to expand your business and can look at other options for you. So instead of comparing the price, well, maybe I find a whole other different item for you that is much lower in price, but it's not the thing that you would initially look for because you say, well, you don't really need all that, or let's look at something else, or do you really need this piece of equipment now? Maybe it makes more sense to purchase that later on once your business is established. So there's a consultative approach. And then after that, it comes down to procuring everything. And then when we go to the delivery process, that's really where we stand out, because that's a point where we would have everything shipped to one of our white glove delivery partners in your area, stage everything, and then when you're ready to receive it, we deliver it by what we call our platinum white glove delivery service, which is the top notch delivery service partners that will set everything up in your office and have you ready to go to open up and manage your expansion.
What people don't realize is how important that is, because again, while everybody else is focused on the lowest common denominator being the price, they're not understanding that time is money. So you get a delivery, something gets messed up, you've got a problem. Now you can't get a hold of anybody. How much time are you spending in that? And how much time is your spa not making money? People don't think about that. They just think about, oh, I saved $200.
Yeah. Well, and what you just said there is perfect. Perfect segue to what I was going to say of how do we position that offering to clients. And the way that it's positioned is really your time is very valuable, especially when you're in the process of expanding your business and you're trying to scale, right? If you have one location and you're looking to open up three by the end of the year, you've got so many things that you have to work on from an entrepreneur. Some of which you may be very strong at. Some entrepreneurs are very strong at certain things and they gravitate towards that. I'm very good at marketing. I'm very good at this. And then some other things that are, maybe not their strongest thing to take care of. And what I find with a lot of clinicians is when it comes to things like medical equipment and supplies and things like that, it's not always their strongest area of expertise, and it makes sense. I mean, if you worked in a hospital before and you needed supplies, you went to the bin and the supplies were there and you use them, and then you come back the next day and I like to say they magically reappear. I mean, there's a process behind that and a department and employees and things behind that. But that's what you're used to dealing with. When you have your own business, that really all falls on you. And what I would say on it is, if we can help to take that burden off of you and save you, and what we say is we are very confident based on clients that we've surveyed after doing this process, that we save over 20 hours of time and what you would have to deal with. Many different, talking to all these different vendors and different reps and things like that, doing a lot of research on your own, and then dealing with the delivery and making sure that you've got, labor there in order to help to set everything up, or even the nightmare stories that we've heard, and I know you've heard them, of people they're on a Saturday setting stuff up on their own, which is brutal, right? So
100%.
all of those things are time that could be spent doing other things where you are strong in your business, rather than dealing with that. And so you really have to equate time, as you said, time is money, and really equate that it's not about the lowest price, but it's about the fact that I'm going to save this much amount of time by working with a partner like us.
And I love how you guys have actually quantified the amount of time. 20 hours is significant. And it's not even just about time as money. It's also about energy being a significant currency. That I take it a step forward, take it one step further in my programs. I actually look at how they're expending their energy, because
that's good.
For everybody, it's a little different. So for example, what I know about me is if I spend time or energy getting extremely frustrated because I'm doing something A, I don't enjoy, B, I don't maybe know that much about, or something, it feels like a lot of red tape that I'm having to handle, I get so frustrated, I'm out of commission. So one thing I've learned for me, and that kind of goes into human design, which is a whole another topic, but everybody has their own way of handling things. And for me, frustration, something like that, it'll just take me out. I can't do it. So I work very hard not to get frustrated. I know what makes me frustrated, and I have people that handle everything that frustrates me. So if I have different companies that deal with things that annoy me, because I don't want to deal with it. So, that being said, if you have a company that can eliminate all that stress, because I promise, I don't care who you are, you're not going to be quite the expert on all the equipment out there in the medical spa supply space because, well, there's
Sure.
so much of it. You can't be an expert. So it's so much better for them to leave it to somebody like you who's going to give them the best resources. You know, all of the different products out there. It's huge, and it's unfortunate that people don't really understand that, but hopefully after this, they will. That's
Yeah,
the goal.
I'd say a lot of people do understand it, and it clicks for them immediately. And
So those
again,
are your clients.
what we spoke about at the beginning of it not connecting with every person. Some people are like, I'm going to do that on my own. I can handle all that, and
Right.
that's fine. It's about connecting with those people that understand the value of time. I love the idea of frustration. I think about it in our own business, just a number of tasks that just aren't my strong suit. And when things get really technical and things like web development or SEO and things like that, or even dealing, doing, the nuts and bolts, I would say, not so much the writing piece, but the nuts and bolts of doing our email list and making sure the emails go out correctly. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to deal with things like that.
Yep.
So I always will look at, we have good people to hire those things out to, because I don't want to get frustrated at it. And I do agree with you. Getting frustrated and working on something that you don't enjoy, it always ends up for me becoming a scenario where I say, okay, I just want to take care of this. I'll get it done half an hour, and then you end up looking at the clock and it's an hour and 20 minutes have passed, and you're still crunching away and trying to complete the task, and you're only maybe halfway through it, and now you're frustrated and need to
Right. And
go take a
the
walk or something to clear your head. That's not good. It's not good for your business.
No, because the other thing is, if you actually gave that task to somebody, because trust me, there are people who enjoy whatever you cannot stand.
I
So it's
agree.
not that bad for them. So all of a sudden you've delegated that task and then you just freed up your time to do something you actually absolutely love, which will probably take you no time at all because you love it and you're really good at it. And this is a trap that most entrepreneurs fall into. And this is, this kind of goes into my side of things because they just get so overwhelmed when they become, their own boss and they have to deal with everything that
Sure.
they think they have to deal with everything and they have to manage everything. But the real leg up is when they have found the right people to manage all the things that they're not so great at, because nobody's good at everything. And it's so important as an entrepreneur to figure out what it is that is that makes you feel like a rock star, and mostly just do that and find somebody else to do all those other things.
Yeah, I would say it's two parts. It's do those things, one, and number two, manage the resources that you have around you to make sure they're doing the other things that you don't want to do. If you can do do those two tasks really well as an entrepreneur, you're gonna do well.
Absolutely. So, what is the biggest mistake that you see people making when they first open their spas, as far as supplies? And since that's your expertise, what are the things people do wrong?
When it comes to supplies and equipment and things like that, I would say two things. Let's take it two parts. On supplies, I would say it's probably over ordering, right? You want to kind of stock everything up. You have to think about it strategically, right? So say you're doing IVs, right? I'll just use that as an example. Say you're administering IV therapy, right? You get IV admin sets, right? I'll use that as an example. And you're predominantly going to use 15 drop IV, IV admin sets, right? But you need 10 drop as well. What I often see is people will order based on what they have as far as storage. Meaning, so they're like, well, I'm ordering two 15s, I order two 10s. I've got the storage bin here. I'm going to fill up. There's 100. I'm going to fill up this storage bin with 100. I've got the same size one, or their staff is doing that, right? So they're looking at it and they're like, well, this one's completely full. I need to fill this one up. I'm going to order 100, right? But if you're only doing one 10 drop IV, and I'm making this up, but you do one 10 drop, IV a month, and most of them are 15 because that's what you use, however it works, right? what you end up with is you end up with inconsistency. And that's what we were sort of talking about uh, when we spoke at the Med Spa show with regard to managing par levels and kind of looking at strategically who's managing your inventory at your Med Spa, right? And how are they doing it? And there are certain techniques and things that you can get into to make it a little bit more scientific
Mm.
to help them manage that. Whether you're expanding or even if you're not expanding and you're in a situation where you're an existing business and you're talking about getting a leg up, how to get a leg up and manage your inventory better because listen, any dollars in inventory less that you have on your shelf, if you can keep that there consistently, that's money right back in your pocket. If you spend 10,000 less dollars by having 10,000 less dollars on your shelf, that's $10,000 that goes back to you. And so you really have to think about it in that context.
Yeah, 100%. And, it's funny because you were talking about the hospital before. So, having obviously been in a hospital setting and, using all kinds of resources and not thinking about it, the minute you are paying for everything, I have to say there's a different pain associated with seeing things wasted. So I remember, when I saw my staff just wasting gloves and, oh my God, it just hurt because now I was paying for those.
Yeah. It's funny. I was, going back when I was years and years ago when I was a sales rep, I had a hospital and then there was also a surgery center. And the surgery center was, I think it was, can't remember what it was, 51% owned by the hospital or 51% owned by the surgeons and 49% owned by the hospital. I think that's how it was. So it was,
Yeah.
and you would talk to the surgeons about using something in the hospital. And they were like, is that less expensive? Is that cheaper? Well, you'd say to them, no, doctor, so no, it's less expensive. And here's why. And they kind of didn't have an interest in it. Then you go over to talk to them at the surgery center and they're like, is that cheaper? Well, let me tell you, is it cheaper? Yeah. Okay. I'll use it. Like, but do you want to trial it? No, 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 no. It's fine. I'll use it. Right. When it's their own money, it really changes the perspective on what they're willing to do. And all of a sudden, no, it's not a problem to use that product that's less expensive, just
100%.
in context.
It's so true. And one more thing I wanted to say about something you mentioned about having your staff deal with the products.
Sure.
Let me tell you, there has to be some checks and balances there. I've gone through it all where, I was handling it, which that became obsolete very quickly because obviously I had other
Yes.
things to do.
Hmm.
But then, then we had medical assistants handling that. Well, then they just
Sure.
overbought. They never looked at pricing. So then I finally moved that to the office manager, that the medical assistant has to tell that to the office manager, and then I review it, and then it's final approval. I literally made more steps because we were losing so much money in that.
Sure.
Just
Sure.
syringes, silly things we weren't even using. I mean, and I never
Yeah.
had time to check all that. But, if it was bought, it's hard to go back and check it after it's bought. But once it's on the front end, it's much, much easier. So I always recommend people really having a handle on what is being bought in their med spas. So that's one thing with just like gloves, syringes, all of the needles, all of that. But then there's the products, the tox, the fillers.
Sure.
You guys don't deal with that, right? I
No, we don't, but we do have a program that we call it's called SOS and it's called Supply Optimization Solutions.
okay.
And we have a consulting team that we work with that and a lot of the consultants that have worked these projects for us, their previous work, they're guys that I knew or guys and gals that I knew from doing hospital consulting. And so they work with us and they can provide somebody like a medical aesthetics provider that has multiple locations, a deep dive into their supply chain, take a look at what they're spending money on. And again, it's less about like, hey, I'm spending, but people always look at, I would say always, but most people, when you talk to them about supplies, the first inclination that they have is what we spoke about earlier. They say, well, if I'm spending $100 for this item and you give me the same item for 95, that's good. If I'm spending $100 and your price is 110, that's bad. And you have to look at it more holistically and you have to look at the entire thing. Like you said, if you have if you're working with a supplier and they're not helping you with those types of things, if you work with a supplier that can help to educate your staff, help to put things like par levels, and a par level is really just simple. If you're using 10 a month, you have a reorder point, and maybe your reorder point is like when the bin gets down to 5, I order 10 more, right? And so but you set that up for each item, like we spoke about earlier. The 15 drops may have a higher par level than the 10 drops, because you don't want to order as many of those, because you don't use them as often. You don't want them to
Right.
expire, right? So those are things that can get set up. Staff process can get put in place to have really our team help walk your team through that. So that's, again, one less thing that you have to deal with. That training, that process gets written into your standard operating procedures. And again, if God forbid your office manager leaves, or one of your assistants or a receptionist, whoever's handling the supplies leaves, that you have a process in place that you can hand to the next person that says, this is how this gets done. This is the process that you need to follow.
Well, where were you 25 years ago, Kevin? I could have used that. I mean, honestly, I spent so much time, energy, and effort stressing about inventory. I can't even tell you how much time, because it is so much money trapped in inventory. And I knew that, but I have definitely become very, very efficient over the years, but this sounds
Sure.
like it's so streamlined, and I wish I just had this system to go on, and then I wouldn't have to worry about it. But, one thing that is so interesting too is when it comes to these supplies, providers get very, very excited about buying it. It's almost like a badge of honor. The more product that they have in their back, I don't know why, but they really do feel very proud of how much inventory they have. And I have walked into spas because I do site visits. So, and one of the big things I look at is their inventory. And nothing makes me crazier than seeing a whole room stocked like crazy. And you're right. They fill it to how big the space is. I never thought about that.
Sure. You know, that's a common way to deal with it too. And the other challenge that comes into effect is, like, if you have issues, as soon as I say this, everybody that went through COVID totally knows the scenario and the situation afterwards, where manufacturers are on back order, right? And they have a rolling back order for things. And that's very frustrating, because in those situations, the priority, we just dealt with this with IV, and we're still kind of dealing with it a little bit with IV solutions, just normal saline, right? One of the largest manufacturing plants in the US got taken out during COVID, and that led to a huge problem with IV solutions. And when those types of things happen, it's frustrating, because the priority from the manufacturer's end of things, of where allocations go, they go to large hospital systems first, then hospitals, then kind of like trickles down to clinics and other, and sort of at the bottom of the pile are, your 1, 2, 3 location, 5 location med spa is really going to be a much lower priority. Now, especially in something like IV solutions, understandable. You have somebody that's in the ICU, that it's going to be a life-saving situation, and that's understandable. But at the same time, that really leads to challenges that you have to kind of work your way through, and that can be very, very frustrating. But at the same time, what often happens from a psychological standpoint with the staff is, or even yourself, if you're experiencing a back order on something, what are you going to do the next time that it's in stock, I can order it now? What's the psychological thing that most people do? I mean, I'll leave it to you with that one.
Oh, yeah. And well, what they do is they overorder. But not only that, there's also another aspect of it when it comes to the supplies like the filler and the toxins and all that. The sales reps are very skilled. So, of
Sure.
course, they're going to give you some sort of bulk discount. Well, I'm going to tell you, I fell for that for many, many, many years,
Hmm.
putting in, $10,000 orders, $25,000 orders,
Hmm.
only to see that whatever little, I mean, yes, it was always, they really sweeten the pot, meaning they give you free stuff, they give you
Sure.
samples, they take a certain amount off, maybe you saved $2,000, $3,000. Well, let me tell you what I found out over the years is that savings was negligible. I actually, at the end of the day, lost money because those products expire. They kind of create a situation where it's so exciting to overbuy because you've got all kinds of free stuff and people can't resist free stuff. I know it was hard for me. So I put all this money down. Now I've created a artificial cash flow problem that I didn't even need to have because I bought stuff for 6 months, which I didn't need. I could have just bought stuff. I could have bought enough supplies for a month or two. That would have been plenty. But now I've purchased products for 6 months. Now, some of those products are utilized more than the others. Now, next thing you know, some things are about to expire. Now you've got a problem. Now you've got to do something because now you got to discount. You got to do things too. And it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of mental effort. It takes a lot of effort on the staff's part. And when I did the numbers later, I found out that I was losing money. Every time I bought these bulk products that I was saving money, got all this free product. At the end, I actually came out behind.
Yeah, I've heard of that before from a number of providers. I think it's okay if you want to take advantage of a discount or a bulk buy. But I would say the key thing is you got to really analyze that before you do it, and the analysis should take into account, okay, how long? I would say a couple of things. The first thing that you'd want to look at is what are the expiration dates on the current product? And by the way, before you buy, that should be, you really need to get that information. If you're considering a bulk buy, you need to go to your sales rep and you need to ask them to have their operations team look at the current lots that are there, and you should be anticipating what's the expiration date. And if they come back and they say the expiration date is June of 2028, right? I mean, and you're kind of looking at it, you go, okay, I've got 3 years to use this product. That might be a little bit. By the way, that example of being 3 years might for toxins in other items that might be a little long, but I'm just using that as an example. But you want to look at what the expiration date is, and then you really want to look at, again, you'd be going back to what is your par level. And your par level should be based on not where your gut's at. Well, we typically do about this many. If you look at and you say, okay, we have a par level set on this filler of 25, meaning we keep 25 when it drops down to 15, when it drops down to 10, we order 25 more. And that par level should also be based on, I'm using those numbers, but that par level should be based on the length of time it takes to get product to you, right?
Yes.
So if it takes a week to get product to you, then maybe you're saying like, yeah, when it gets down to 10 or 5, I'll order 20, I'll order 25. I don't want to run out. But what you don't want to do is something that comes the next day is like okay, when it gets down to 20, I'm going to order 25 more. If it's arriving the next day, that doesn't make sense. So those two things, looking and asking for expiration dates and making sure that it coincides with what your par level is, right? And that it fits into, because you have to look at it and say, well, how many months of inventory on hand am I carrying, right, on this item or these items in order to get this discount? And then compute that versus what it's worth on your end. Like you said, creating a cash flow problem. If you're looking at, well, over the next 3 months, I have a big marketing expense. I want to do this. I want to go to this show. I need to do all the other things that you can spend on your business. If you've now locked yourself into a scenario where you're going, oh man, I don't have the money or the resources in order to pay for those things because it's locked into inventory, then like you said, it's really not a savings. It's actually something that's gonna harm your business more than it's gonna do good for it.
Well, it creates a lot of stress. It creates artificial stress knowing that bill is coming up because typically there are 90-day terms. So now all of a sudden you think you're free and clear, and next thing you know, you got a $30,000 expense coming up in 3 months. Well, I don't know about everybody else, but that stuff stressed me out big time, knowing that was coming. I was fine the first month or two, and I was like, oh God, here it comes, the $30,000 expense. And it's really an opportunity cost. I mean, if it's actually, you should look at it as if, what am I not able to do because I'm now having this big expense that, I've got product for 6 months, but I don't really need product for 6 months or 8 months. I only need product for 1 month. And now if I actually have product for just the 1 month or 2 months, whatever you decide is appropriate, now I've got money to market, to go to conferences, to do all these other things to better myself instead of locking up resources. So yeah, it's so complicated and people don't understand how complex it could really be. And then this kind of segues into the next thing, because the other problem is people lack a standardization of their products and their inventory.
Sure.
So what are your thoughts on that, on your standardization of your inventory?
Yeah, that's a very, very common thing, especially sites that have multiple locations.
Hmm.
And it starts out innocently enough. It's like you have one location, you're buying these items from this manufacturer, and then all of a sudden you open up another location, and like you said, you have that other staff member that's placing orders, and they start placing orders for a different manufactured item. And again, it could be for filler, it could be for needles and syringes, or IV tubing, you name it. What
Hmm.
happens there, though, is it starts to lead to, I'd say two things. Number one, ideally, if you can have, think of economy of scale, right? If you can increase your usage on things, that can maybe help you to negotiate better pricing for them, right? So you want to kind of put all your eggs in the one basket, work your volume up, and then that's the point where, if you came back to me and you said, hey, I'm doing 10 cases a month of IV tubing, what can you do for me? You come back and you say, I'm doing 100 cases a month of IV tubing. That gives me as a distributor an opportunity to say, okay, well, let's take a look at that. Let me go back to the manufacturer and work and see what we can do, and see if we can negotiate some better pricing incentives for you, right?
I mean,
So
that's
that's,
priceless. That's priceless that you're doing that on the behalf of your client. Again,
well,
I'm like, where was he 25 years ago?
you have to, right? I mean, that's what really makes you competitive, and puts you in the corner of your clients, right?
Mhm.
So those are things that you really have to do in this business, right? So that's really the number one thing, is from a pricing standpoint, to help to negotiate better pricing on your behalf as a client, right? And I forgot what the second one was, but it'll come back to me. So let's just
That's
keep
okay. It'll come back
keep
to you. No,
talking.
but that is huge. I mean, and I know this, it's funny because maybe people watching are like, inventory, it's so boring. But I'm
Yeah,
sorry, for anybody who runs a business, this expense is huge. I mean, would say it's second to staffing. Is
agreed,
the staffing
agreed.
is first. That's your biggest expense, payroll. But then next is your inventory. And if you don't have a control of your inventory, I'm sorry, you are
Yeah,
just, I think you're on a slow race to the death.
yeah. All right. So then, but thank you for saying that. All that is correct. I remember the second thing. So
Oh,
let's
good,
get
good,
back to
good.
it. Um, so pricing is one. The second thing is just look at it from a safety standpoint. Having inconsistent clinical practices across your different locations, that can really lead to inconsistency, which is not something that you want when you're scaling and you have multiple locations. So think of it just in the example of IV tubing. I'm using this IV tubing. Again, that's a small example, but I'm using this IV tubing at location A, and employees are, administering IVs. And then one of my employees goes over to location B, and there's a different product, and, it leads to, I don't know, they administer it incorrectly because they didn't know that, oh, it's a different gauge, or it's a different size, right? Or it leads, God forbid, it leads to some sort of like safety situation, or a needle stick or whatever, because they weren't familiar with using that. I know those things are unlikely, but those are things that happen. And then the challenge can become, in scaling, you have 3, 5, 6 locations, and now you've got, this location does this location does that,
Mm,
and it starts to lead to, one location is better than the other, or you have higher ratings here than you do there,
mm.
or other things. And that's not just with supplies, it's with other things. But so it's important to really work to standardize and trying to keep that consistency across practices. And I tell you, when we get item files from places that have multiple locations, and they send us an item file, sometimes they're not even buying from the same distributor, but they'll send us their item file, and we'll do an analysis, and we look at what they're buying, and we're like, we show them sometimes, you've got 6 different types of the same 3 ml syringe from, even 2 or 3 at the same location. Let's look at standardizing that all into one item, and properly, properly do those things to help you on pricing and also help you on consistency, right?
Absolutely. And, really, it's not a small thing that you're describing. I know it may seem like it is, but for medical providers, and I know me included, I always liked consistency. I knew what I was using. I knew what this syringe looked like, that needle. I don't want to think about how it's different, because then, my mind starts going to something else. The more consistent we can be, especially when we're dealing with clients, patients, and,
Yeah,
medical procedures, it's actually extremely important. I always had every room set up the same way. You have multiple exam
of
rooms,
course, of
because
course.
that's time. It's mental fatigue. If you're doing something repetitively 30, 50, I was seeing a lot of patients, so
Of
I
course.
always knew that every exam room was set up the same. So it didn't matter whether I was in room 1 or room 5. I knew where I could find this. I knew where I could find that. Then I don't have to think about it. I just go, and it's automatic
Great.
muscle memory, right? So in the same way, when a provider's doing a procedure, the more things we can have just be automated so that it's muscle memory. They just go to the one cabinet and they get this, 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 and this. I always set up things the same way. I always put my sharps in the same place.
Sure.
I was
Yeah,
extremely consistent about all of that, because it took any thinking out of the equation of, that I didn't have to think about. So I could focus on
exactly.
thinking about the important things at hand, what this client wants, what's going on here, all of those things, but everything was automated and
Of
standardized.
course.
So it's
Yeah,
huge. A
you
lot
want
of
to make
people
it
don't
you
do it.
make it easy to do the right thing, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down for you and your staff. And that translates over into equipment too, as well, when we're helping to set up new locations. I have
Mhm.
a, 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 practice that I'm working with that's right here in Greenwich, and in the process of opening up another location where I'm at. And an example is we're looking at the new practice that they're opening, and they have an autoclave, and it's a fine product, but it's maybe 10 or 15 years old, and they have a newer model. We're like, okay, well, we should look at getting the newer model. And then when they mentioned to me, well, we have this model at this location and at the other two locations, it immediately says to me, the kind of like, hairs in the back of my neck sort of go up, or they're going, yeah, maybe we should do the newer one. That makes sense. It's got some better technology. And I'm like, you know what? Let's keep it consistent and let's use the exact same one. We can still get this, there's nothing wrong with the older model. It's even a little bit less expensive, but let's bring that model of autoclave in for the new location so that everybody has the same autoclave. God forbid somebody is trained on one, model of autoclave, and then, it leads to some issue with sterilization or safety at your practice.
Right.
It's just not worth it to put those things at risk. You want to really just keep things consistent. So that's sort of an example of kind of in real life of how that consultative process works with clients.
I think that's a great example, because to be honest, I would have probably thought the same thing, like, oh, get the newer one because it's newer. But that's a really, really good point. You don't, God forbid, one day a staff member comes from that office to this location and
Yeah.
they don't know how to use it. That's a real problem. And you're right. It's so much more important to have everything be standardized. So I love it. I mean, to me, this is really exciting. I think I totally geek out about this.
Funny. We have this the program that we have, like I said, it's called Supply Optimization Solutions. So it's SOS, right? The
Love it.
marketing behind that was me saying, like, hey, call out an SOS before your supplies get out of hand. Most of my providers kind of laugh. They're like, well, mine are already out of hand, so I need help. And then I jokingly used to say I should have named it so, as in just like SO, because you talk to providers about it, like inventory management. They're like, so, like so what, because it's just not something that is like the most interesting thing to talk about. Again, what you said before about things that are sort of outside of our comfort zone, or the things in our business that we don't gravitate to. There's very few people that I typically talk to that are medical providers they're really interested in inventory management and things like that, and standardization. But on the flip side of that, it can really help out your business, and it is also something on our end where with our consulting team, where we can help your staff and really just sort of keep you in the loop but help to train your staff and help to put some best practices in place at your location in order to help you thrive. And that's what we do.
I think it's awesome. And it may not be fun for a lot of people, but once you start seeing how much you're losing as far as money and how much more you could be keeping, well, then it starts to get a little more exciting. I mean, people just want to spend all their money, and that it's not about how much money you make. It's about what you keep. And when you're running your own business, that starts to matter a lot. So I'm going to digress just for a minute because, of course, I've been staring at this Monaco poster behind you.
Oh,
So I have
I
to
like
ask
that.
about that. I was like, I know because we're getting towards the end. I want to ask
Oh,
about
okay.
something a little fun, but
I
so
I was so I yeah, so my wife and I, let's see, this is probably maybe like 6 years ago. We went to Monaco and during the Grand Prix and saw
mm,
the race. So I just thought they have all these every year they have a poster, and this is the one I think it's like, yeah, 1965. And I just thought I got a copy of it because I thought it was really really cool. You have these race cars flying around the narrow streets of Monaco. I don't know if you've ever been, not just to Monaco in general, not necessarily
no,
the
I've
Grand
been to
Prix, but
Monaco,
it's
but not during the Grand Prix. But
yeah,
I'd love to go.
it is really cool, and it's interesting that it's kind of the same racetrack layout that it was, 50, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, right? Today, even with modern cars. So I thought that was cool. And anyway, I had this poster and
I
yeah,
love it.
so that's
I
that.
love it.
Thank you.
Well, I love all things fast cars, so of course, I had to know about that.
Well, yeah, exactly. I had a different poster there, but for your segue, I went and I changed.
Yeah, you're like, I did have to change it just so she'd be really excited about it.
Yeah,
So,
I know what you like. We all saw the beginning, we
yeah.
get it.
I love it. I love it. Well, I just want to make a couple of little announcements. So
Sure.
Kevin and Medical Spa Supply are going to be one of the sponsors for the Aesthetic Profit Accelerator. So I want to make sure I pop up that link here. So this is the link for those of you who might be interested or who are aesthetic providers and want to understand more about how to more effectively run your business. And again, I am really out to disrupt every bit of these outdated paradigms because frankly, what's out there is just telling people to hustle more, do more. But you know what? You can scale with soul with the right strategy, and you don't have to sell your soul to be profitable. And most people don't realize that. And I think that's huge. So, and then I'm going to pop this up here. This is the link if you want to hear more. Well, that got really big, didn't it? It's like, wow, that's really big. So there's the QR code to check out Medical Spa Supply. You can reach out to Kevin at Medical Spa Supply. Wow, that's a tongue twister for me today for whatever reason.
Yeah, you got it. You're there. You're there.
And I have to say, I'm so grateful for you to be sharing all this amazing information with us. Yeah, some people may say it's not so interesting, but it really is. It's exciting when you get into nitty gritties of scaling a business, running a business efficiently and effectively. You can't do it without knowing the things that we were discussing today. So it's actually pretty big. So I thank you for sharing all your industry insights with us. SOS, ease. Now I know what they mean, so I can just let them flow off my tongue easily.
There you go. There you go. No, I really appreciate you having us, and we're very excited to sponsor your conference, your meeting, and I think it's great. I really think what you're doing is great, and we we're big supporters. So thanks for having me, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for being here. And again, I think it's really important to find people that think in the same way in the industry. And one thing I realized when I
Great.
met you is that we do. And,
Uh,
I'm very specific about who I do business with, who I collaborate with. And I know you are too. And I want to work with people who aren't just transactional, who have heart
great.
and soul in their business. And I saw that from you from day one. So thank you for
Agree.
helping us understand and blessing us with your insight. And you have a fabulous rest of the evening.
Yeah, you too. Take care. Thanks so
All
much.
right. Bye. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm so excited to have them there as a sponsor for the Aesthetic Profit Accelerator Bootcamp in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that's going to be from August 7th to 10th. And for any of you who So, obviously click the link and hopefully we will see you there. So almost the end of, well, I guess it's in about 2 weeks. So yes, I believe so. Well, I hope you guys have a fabulous evening and thanks again for joining us on another episode of Gloves Off.